You stand on the range with a bucket of balls and a bag full of clubs, and every single one of them feels like a different swing. The 7-iron behaves. The driver betrays you. The next shot goes dead right for no reason you can name, and you start to wonder if the problem is you. It isn't. The problem is that you were taught a swing with too many moving parts when a simpler one exists that repeats with every club in the bag. One motion, one plane, the same feeling from your wedge to your driver. This method was mastered by a man most golfers have never heard of, and the golf world quietly walked past it for 50 years. I am going to show you where it came from, why it disappeared, and how you can feel it this week on your own range with the clubs you already own. You do not need a coach. You do not need new equipment. I remember the exact afternoon it broke me. A public course outside town, a Tuesday, my third lesson package that year, already paid for, and I duffed a chip in front of 2 strangers and felt the money leaking out of my pockets in real time. Years of it, gone. So let me tell you what I wish someone had told me before I wasted all of it. For most of my golfing life, I believed something that cost me thousands of dollars, and I never once questioned it. I believed that a good swing was complicated. I believed that the reason my shots scattered was that I had not yet practiced the complicated thing enough. Every lesson added another piece. Keep the lead arm straight. Now rotate the hips first. Now drop the club into the slot. Now clear the left side. Now hold the angle. Now shallow it out. Piece after piece after piece, and each piece needed timing, and timing needed practice, and practice needed more lessons. Here is the part nobody said out loud. The swing I was being taught is what teachers call a 2-plane swing. The club goes up on one plane and has to come back down on a different, flatter plane, which means somewhere in the middle you have to make a move to reroute the club. That reroute is the whole problem. It has to happen at exactly the right moment, at high speed, or the club face arrives open or closed and your ball sails offline. When I timed it perfectly, I looked like a golfer. When my timing was even slightly off, and it usually was, I looked like a man fighting his own arms. And that is exactly why it works with some clubs and not others. A short iron is forgiving because the swing is shorter and slower, and there is less time for the reroute to go wrong. The driver is unforgiving because the swing is long and fast, and any flaw gets multiplied. So I would leave a lesson striping wedges, feel like I had finally figured it out, walk to the tee box the next Saturday, pull out the driver, and watch the whole thing fall apart. I blame myself every time. It never occurred to me that the design of the swing itself was the thing setting me up to fail. Moe Norman. Born in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada on July 10, 1929. He grew up poor, taught himself the game by hitting balls until his hands bled, and he became, by the testimony of people who played beside him, the most accurate ball striker who ever lived. I am not exaggerating for effect. Let me give you the numbers, because the numbers are what stopped me cold when I first read them. Moe Norman could stand on a range and hit ball after ball so straight that the shots would land almost on top of each other, forming a rope of golf balls stretching out across the grass. Other players nicknamed him Pipeline Moe because his shots flew as if they were traveling through a pipe. He once hit balls for a demonstration, and a watching professional asked him to aim at a fairway sign about 240 yards out. Moe hit the sign. Then he complained that he had been trying to hit it on the first bounce. He set a record by hitting more than 1,540 balls in a single day in an exhibition. He played a stretch of competitive rounds without a single shot that could be called truly crooked. Two of the greatest names the sport has ever produced said things about him that they never said about each other. Tiger Woods said that only 2 players in history had ever truly owned their swing, meaning they could repeat it under any pressure, and one of the 2 he named was Moe Norman. Lee Trevino, a man not known for handing out compliments, called him the best ball striker he had ever seen. So the obvious question, the one that took me far too long to ask, is this. If a man could hit the ball that straight, that repeatedly, for that many decades, why on earth was I never taught the way he did it? And the answer is where this story turns, because the answer is not innocent. Moe Norman swung the club on a single plane. That is the whole secret, and it is almost insultingly simple once you see it. At address he set his hands high, so that the shaft of the club and his lead arm formed one straight line running from his shoulder all the way down to the ball. In a normal setup, the kind I was taught, your arms hang down and the club angles away from them, so your arms are on one line and the club is on another. Moe erased that gap. He set up in the position most golfers only reach for a split second at impact, and then he simply swung the club back and through on that same single line. Up and down on one plane. Nothing to reroute. Nothing to time. The club returned to the ball on the exact plane it left, because it never left that plane in the first place. Think about what that removes. It removes the one dangerous move, the reroute, that made my driver behave differently from my wedge. When the club travels on a single plane, the length and speed of the swing stop mattering so much, because there is no timing window that has to line up. That is why the single plane swing works with every club in the bag. The wedge and the driver are not two different motions anymore. They are the same motion at different sizes. For the first time, the thing I striped on the range and the thing I hit off the tee were finally the same swing. Now here is the part that made my stomach turn, and it is where I have to be honest with you about who profited from my confusion. Moe Norman was strange. He talked fast, he was uncomfortable around crowds, and by today's understanding, he almost certainly lived his whole life somewhere on the autism spectrum, though nobody had that language for it back then. The golf establishment of his era did not know what to do with a man like that. He won the Canadian Amateur Championship in 1955, and again in 1956. He earned his way to the biggest stages, but he was treated as a curiosity, a sideshow, a man to be laughed at rather than studied, and because the messenger was strange, the message got buried with him. Nobody in the mainstream instruction business wanted to teach the swing of the odd man from Canada, even though the odd man from Canada could outstrike every one of them. But strangeness is only half the reason it disappeared, and the other half is money. Think for a moment about who makes a living from your inconsistency. A simple swing that repeats on its own, with every club, is very bad for a business built on selling you the next fix. If your slice goes away in 3 weeks and never comes back, you stop booking lessons. If the same motion works from your wedge to your driver, you stop believing that a special new club will finally save your game. The whole modern golf economy, the lesson packages, the endless stream of new equipment, the training aids sold on late-night television, all of it feeds on the two-plane swing, because the two-plane swing needs constant maintenance. It needs you back on the range. It needs you back in the pro shop. A swing that a working person could learn and keep for life is not a product. It is a threat to a product. I am not telling you every teacher is a villain. Most of them were taught the complicated way and pass on the only thing they know, exactly as it was passed to them. But I am telling you that the system as a whole had every reason in the world to let the simple method die quietly with the strange Canadian who invented it, and for a long time that is precisely what happened. Except it did not fully die, and that is the part that gives this whole story its hope. Because one man refused to let it. His name is Todd Graves. As a young player he heard about Moe Norman, sought him out, and spent years learning directly from him before Moe passed away on September 4, 2004. Graves became known as Little Moe, and he built an academy dedicated to preserving and teaching the single-plane swing, breaking down what Moe did by feel into pieces an ordinary golfer could actually copy. He is the reason the method survived at all. Without him it would be a footnote, a name in an old record book, a strange man on grainy film. Because of him, you and I can still learn it. Keep that in mind, because at the end I am going to give you the exact starting position he preserved, the one that unlocks everything else. But before that, I need to answer the question you are probably already asking, because I asked it too. If this swing is so accurate, why did Moe never dominate the professional tour and become a household name like Hogan or Nicklaus? The answer has almost nothing to do with the swing and everything to do with the man. Moe hated the spotlight. He would hit a perfect shot and walk away before the crowd could react. He played fast, sometimes hitting the ball before he had even finished addressing it, because standing still with people watching made him miserable. He turned down chances at the big American tour. He was more comfortable earning small money in Canadian events and giving exhibitions where he could just hit balls and be left alone. His swing was never the thing holding him back. His comfort was. And the tragedy is that the golf world took his personal discomfort and used it as an excuse to ignore his mechanics, as if a shy man could not possibly have solved the very problem the confident men were still struggling with. So before I show you the man who proved it was never you, let me tell you where you can get the whole thing that finally fixed this for me. Picture yourself on that same range next Saturday, driver in hand, and instead of that dead right miss you have no name for, you actually know what went wrong before the ball lands. That is exactly what the complete swing system gives you. First swing hands you the grip, posture, and setup that 90% of beginners skip, and teaches you to read your miss so you can diagnose every shot yourself. Deep swing takes it further with advanced ball flight diagnosis and a permanent fix for topped fairway woods. And the full collection lays out the whole roadmap, every major flaw diagnosed and fixed, built on 7 core fundamentals across more than 420 pages. Here is something you can do tonight for free. Take one club in your living room, set your hands high so the shaft and your lead arm form one straight line, and take a slow half-swing feeling for that reroute. When it vanishes, you have just proven the whole idea to yourself before you spend a single dollar. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. And every lesson package you keep buying is money that is already leaking out while the simpler swing sits there waiting. Now let me show you the man who proved this was possible, because his story is where everything turns. Now here is the man who proved there was another way, and I want you to remember his name because the golf world spent decades pretending it forgot it. Here is a fact that should have changed golf instruction forever, and somehow did not. In 1995, the head of one of the largest golf equipment companies in the world, deeply aware of what Moe had accomplished and how little he had been given, arranged to pay Moe Norman a sum of money every month for the rest of his life, simply to honor him and make sure the great ball striker never went without. The people at the very top of the sport knew exactly what he was. They knew what he could do. They made sure he was cared for. And still, the way he swung the club was kept out of the standard lesson, out of the beginner clinic, out of the path that a person like me walked down for years handing over money. So let me quantify what that cost me, because I want you to feel the number, and then I want you to make sure it stops being your number too. A single private lesson at a decent facility runs somewhere between $60 and $120, and no serious teacher sells you just one. I bought packages, 3 lessons, 5 lessons, 6-lesson bundles, year after year, always convinced that the missing piece was one lesson away. Add a launch monitor session here, a club fitting there, a new driver every couple of seasons, because surely the driver was the problem. I added it up once, honestly, and over roughly a decade I had spent more than $4,000 chasing a repeating swing, and I still did not have one. $4,000 to feel worse about myself on a Tuesday afternoon. And the whole time, the swing that would have actually repeated was sitting in old film reels of a shy Canadian that no one had bothered to show me. Now here is where I stop you, because I know exactly who is watching right now and thinking, this is not for them. Maybe you are not a serious golfer. Maybe you play a handful of times a year with friends or family. You have never taken a lesson in your life, and you are certain that anything involving swing planes is far above your head and meant for people with low handicaps and expensive memberships. I am talking directly to you now, because the truth is the opposite. The single plane swing was not built for the gifted. It was built by a self-taught poor kid and preserved for ordinary people precisely because it removes the hard part. This next part is for you, and you can do it in your living room tonight with a single club and no ball. Start with the grip and the setup, because that is where 90% of the magic lives, and it costs nothing. Take any club, stand a little taller than you think you should, and set your feet a touch wider than your shoulders, wider than the narrow stance most golfers use. That wide base is the first thing Moe did, and it gives you stability so your body is not swaying and searching for balance. Now, instead of letting your arms hang straight down so the club angles out in front of you, push your hands out and up until the shaft of the club and your lead arm form one straight line, pointing from your shoulder down to where the ball would be. You will feel like you are reaching for the ball. That feeling is correct. That is the single plane. You have just placed yourself in the impact position at the very start, which means you no longer have to find it on the way down. Hold that position and take slow half swings, back and through, keeping the club traveling along that same straight line you set. No ball, no target, no pressure. Just feel the club going up and coming down on one track, like a door swinging on a hinge, instead of looping around your body. Do that for 10 minutes in front of a mirror and you will feel something you have possibly never felt in a golf swing before, which is the total absence of any moment where you have to save it. There is no scary transition. There is no reroute. There is just up and down on the same line. That single feeling, practiced in your living room for free, is worth more than half the paid lessons I ever bought. And once you feel it without a ball, you will understand in your body why it works with every club, which no diagram ever managed to teach me. Because the motion does not change from the wedge to the driver, only the length of the club and the width of your stance adjust slightly. The fundamental line stays identical. You are not learning 14 swings for 14 clubs anymore. You are learning one swing and letting the club do the rest. But feeling the single plane at home is only the doorway, because there is a deeper reason this swing protects you that goes beyond consistency, and it is the reason older golfers in particular should be leaning toward this method rather than away from it. The conventional swing I was taught relies on a lot of body rotation and a lot of independent movement between the arms, the hands, and the torso. That is fine when you are 25 and flexible. It becomes a slow injury when you are older. All that rerouting and twisting puts strain on the lower back, the lead wrist, and the trailing elbow, and it is no accident that so many recreational golfers over the age of 50 end up nursing a bad back that they blame on the game itself. The game did not do it. The complicated swing did it. Moe Norman hit more golf balls in his lifetime than almost any human being who ever lived. Hundreds of thousands upon hundreds of thousands of full swings. And he kept striking the ball beautifully into his 70s. A swing that lets a man do that without breaking down is telling you something important about how the human body is meant to move a golf club. The single plane swing keeps your arms and the club working together as one unit, instead of fighting each other. There is less independent wrist manipulation, less violent separation between your upper and lower body, less of the twisting that grinds down the spine over years. For a body that is no longer 25, that is not a small advantage. That is the difference between playing comfortably into your 70s and quitting at 60 because your back gave out chasing a swing that was punishing you the whole time. When I switched, the soreness I had always assumed was just part of golf. The ache on the left side of my back after a range session quietly went away. I had blamed my age. It was never my age. It was the reroute. So now let me give you the finale, the exact position that Todd Graves preserved from Moe Norman himself. The one detail that ties the whole thing together, and that I promise you have never been shown in a standard lesson, because I certainly never was. Everyone talks about the hands-high setup, and that matters, but there is a specific feeling underneath it that makes it actually work, and here it is. When you extend your arms and the club into that single straight line at address, you must let the club sit more in the palm of your trailing hand, not deep in the fingers the way conventional teaching insists. Moe held the club almost as if he were carrying a tray, with the grip pressed across the palm of his right hand for a right-handed golfer. And this is the piece almost every teacher gets backwards. A palm hold does something a finger hold cannot. It locks the club and the lead arm into that single unit, so that when you swing, the face stays square to the plane the entire way through, with almost no manipulation. The reason your standard grip needs perfect timing is that the fingers allow the face to rotate open and shut, and you are forced to time that rotation. Move the grip into the palm, Set your hands high on that single line, widen your base, and the face simply stops flipping. It rides through impact square because it has nowhere else to go. That is the whole thing. A wide stance for stability. Hands set high so the arm and shaft form one straight line into the ball. The grip riding more in the palm to lock the unit together and kill the face rotation. And then a simple up and down motion on that single plane, the same for every club you own. It is not a trick, and it is not a theory. It is the literal set of positions that made a self-taught kid from Kitchener the straightest striker the game has ever seen. Positions that were nearly buried with him because he was too odd to be taken seriously, and because a repeating swing is bad for a business built on selling you the next fix. Go set it up tonight. Take one club, stand in front of a mirror, widen your feet, push your hands out and up into that straight line, feel the grip settle into your palm, and swing slowly up and down on that single track. You will feel the reroute vanish, and the next time you stand on that range with a bucket of balls and a bag full of clubs, you will finally understand that they were never 14 different swings. They were always one. Somebody just made sure you never learned it. I spent more than $4,000 and the better part of a decade learning that the fault was never me, it was the design of the swing I was handed, and the quiet relief of knowing that is worth more than any trophy I will never win. You are the kind of person who would rather learn the thing that actually works than keep paying to be told you simply have not suffered through enough lessons yet. That instinct is right. Trust it. So tell me one thing in the comments, and be specific, because I read them. When you set up in that single plane position tonight, hands high, arm and shaft in one straight line, did you feel that little jolt of reaching toward the ball, the feeling that something was finally where it belonged? Just right, I felt the line. I want to know how many of you feel it the very first time, because I think it is going to be most of you. And if you are tired of being sold the complicated version of everything, of paying over and over for knowledge that used to be common, follow along, because this channel exists to dig these buried methods back up and hand them to the people they were taken from. Next time I am going to show you the forgotten way an old ball striker practiced without ever hitting a full shot. The drill that built that pipeline accuracy in a backyard the size of a parking space. And once you see it, you will never waste a bucket of range balls the same way again. Before you go, let me tell you what's waiting inside. Members get the full single plane setup and feel, club by club, picking up right where we stopped, from wedge to driver. If something isn't clicking, ask me directly, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be alone. Practical folks like you are already inside the Old Ways Almanac. Just point your phone's camera at the code. Cancel any time with one click. Now that you've got the single plane working, there's one simple thing that ties it all together and makes every swing feel easier. I'll show you exactly what it is right here next.